Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm bringing you the next episode in the story of James and LyTuDiep, a new chapter where emotions, conflicts, and difficult choices continue to push the characters closer to a point of no return. In the previous episode, the relationship between James and Diep was no longer defined by the rare moments of peace they once shared. Instead, it became increasingly overshadowed by pressure, tension, and invisible yet heavy barriers. The distance between them did not come from a lack of love, but from the realities they were forced to face, despite neither of them ever wanting this outcome. James's father relentlessly tried to stop their relationship. It was no longer just about warnings or family objections. He used his power, status, and influence to block every possible path James might take. Every decision James made was monitored, every choice controlled, until he gradually realized that love alone was not enough to stand against such an overwhelming force. Under that pressure, James had no option but to go into hiding. He left behind familiar places and lived in constant caution and silence, partly to protect himself and partly to keep Diep away from unnecessary danger. During that time, James quietly gathered pieces of evidence, small fragments of information, all leading toward a decision he never imagined he would one day have to make, taking his own father to court. It was a choice that tormented James deeply. Because deep down, that man was not just an opponent or an obstacle, but his father, the one who raised him, the root of memories that could never be erased. Yet when pushed to the edge, James understood that if he did not act, he would remain trapped under that control forever, losing not only his own freedom, but possibly Diep as well. Throughout that period, Diep stayed by James's side in the quietest way possible. She was never loud, never demanding, only silently accompanying him, listening, and sharing the heavy moments he had to endure. And yet, Diep was also the one who repeatedly urged him to stop. Not because she was afraid, and not because she lacked courage, but because more than anyone else, she understood how high the price would be for suing his own father. She knew that no matter the outcome, a wound would remain in James's heart, a wound that would never fully heal. It would not bleed, but it would ache silently, persistently, and follow him for the rest of his life. Diep did not want James to win at the cost of losing himself, nor did she want him to spend the rest of his days burdened by a regret that could never be erased. And in the midst of that inner turmoil, when nothing yet had a clear answer, when every possible choice carried pain and loss, an unexpected event suddenly struck. Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm bringing you the next episode in the story of James and LyTuDiep, a new chapter where emotions, conflicts, and difficult choices continue to push the characters closer to a point of no return. In the previous episode, the relationship between James and Diep was no longer defined by the rare moments of peace they once shared. Instead, it became increasingly overshadowed by pressure, tension, and invisible yet heavy barriers. The distance between them did not come from a lack of love, but from the realities they were forced to face, despite neither of them ever wanting this outcome. James's father relentlessly tried to stop their relationship. It was no longer just about warnings or family objections. He used his power, status, and influence to block every possible path James might take. Every decision James made was monitored, every choice controlled, until he gradually realized that love alone was not enough to stand against such an overwhelming force. Under that pressure, James had no option but to go into hiding. He left behind familiar places and lived in constant caution and silence, partly to protect himself and partly to keep Diep away from unnecessary danger. During that time, James quietly gathered pieces of evidence, small fragments of information, all leading toward a decision he never imagined he would one day have to make, taking his own father to court. It was a choice that tormented James deeply. Because deep down, that man was not just an opponent or an obstacle, but his father, the one who raised him, the root of memories that could never be erased. Yet when pushed to the edge, James understood that if he did not act, he would remain trapped under that control forever, losing not only his own freedom, but possibly Diep as well. Throughout that period, Diep stayed by James's side in the quietest way possible. She was never loud, never demanding, only silently accompanying him, listening, and sharing the heavy moments he had to endure. And yet, Diep was also the one who repeatedly urged him to stop. Not because she was afraid, and not because she lacked courage, but because more than anyone else, she understood how high the price would be for suing his own father. She knew that no matter the outcome, a wound would remain in James's heart, a wound that would never fully heal. It would not bleed, but it would ache silently, persistently, and follow him for the rest of his life. Diep did not want James to win at the cost of losing himself, nor did she want him to spend the rest of his days burdened by a regret that could never be erased. And in the midst of that inner turmoil, when nothing yet had a clear answer, when every possible choice carried pain and loss, an unexpected event suddenly struck. Outside the emergency room, James's mother was nearly completely broken. She sat motionless on a long bench against the wall, her back slightly hunched, as if loosening her grip for even a moment would cause her entire body to collapse. Her trembling hands rested on her lap, fingers clenched tightly together until they turned pale, yet still not enough to hold on to the fragile calm she had left. Her eyes never left the closed emergency room door, above which the red light continued to glow coldly, a reminder that inside, the life of someone she loved was hanging by a fragile thread. Each time the door shifted even slightly, her heart lurched, only for it to be a nurse or a doctor passing by. Hope flared for an instant, then vanished just as quickly, leaving behind a heavy emptiness in her chest. Her breathing was no longer steady, breaking and trembling, as if she herself were struggling to endure each passing minute. Diep sat beside her, saying very little. She understood that in moments like this, no matter how gentle the words, they could hardly ease the pain rising to the surface. She simply held James's mother's hand tightly, offering a warmth that was subtle yet real. Diep's hand was smaller, but firm, like a silent message that she was not facing this alone. From time to time, Diep leaned in slightly, offering a few quiet words of comfort, just enough for James's mother to know that someone was still there, still waiting with her. That quiet presence, in this moment, became the only support for a mother standing on the edge of despair. Not her son, not other familiar relatives, but the very woman who had once been opposed, who had endured so much hurt, was the one who stayed until the end. Time passed with terrifying slowness. Each minute felt endlessly stretched, heavy and suffocating. No one knew how long it had been, only that the hospital corridor seemed to grow quieter, while the weight of worry pressed harder and harder on the shoulders of the two people waiting in front of that door. Finally, the emergency room door opened. A doctor stepped out with a serious expression, eyes tired yet still focused. Just from that look alone, James's mother's heart tightened, her body trembling slightly, as if she already sensed the bad news. The doctor's voice was calm but firm. The patient has lost too much blood and is currently in critical condition. Unfortunately, the hospital is short of the matching blood type. Family members need to be tested immediately. If a match is found, the transfusion must be done right away. The words fell heavily, cold and unforgiving. James's mother nearly lost her balance, gripping the arm of the bench to steady herself. In that moment, her thoughts seemed to go blank, leaving only a vague yet overwhelming fear spreading through her. Without a second of hesitation, Diep stood up immediately. She turned to James's mother, her eyes more resolute than ever, and followed the staff to be tested. Everything happened quickly, yet inside Diep's heart was in turmoil. She sat waiting, hands clasped tightly together, clearly feeling each rapid heartbeat pounding in her chest. Waiting for the result felt like the longest moments of all. Diep gently closed her eyes, silently praying. Not for herself, not for the pain she had endured in the past, but for the man lying on the edge between life and death, the man who had once treated her coldly, who had been the source of so many obstacles, but who was also the father of the man she loved. And then, when the results came back, a brief silence filled the space. Diep was the only one with a compatible blood type. The moment she learned that she was the only one with a compatible blood type, Diep barely hesitated for even a second. She immediately nodded and agreed to donate blood, even though she herself was not in the best physical condition. Her face turned slightly pale, yet her eyes remained steady and resolute. At that moment, any concern for her own well-being became secondary, because before her was a human life hanging between life and death. The nurses quickly escorted Diep into the preparation room. Lying still on the cold white bed, her arm was carefully sterilized. When the needle touched her skin, Diep gently closed her eyes and took a deep breath, trying to keep her breathing calm and even. Countless thoughts intertwined in her mind, about James, about his mother waiting outside, about the man lying in the emergency room. Not memories of pain, nor resentment that once existed, but one clear feeling: if she did not do this, she would never find peace within herself. The dark red blood flowed slowly through the tube, little by little leaving Diep's body and being sent directly into the emergency room, where James's father was fighting for his life under the doctor's relentless efforts. The emergency procedure unfolded in an atmosphere so tense it was almost suffocating. Every movement of the medical team was urgent and precise, allowing no room for error. Outside, James's mother waited with tear-filled eyes, her hands tightly clasped together, whispering prayers over and over. She knew that beyond the door, not only was the man she loved struggling to survive, but also a young woman was silently sacrificing for her family, despite having endured so much hurt from the very person lying on that hospital bed. Time continued to pass slowly, each hour stretching unbearably long. When the transfusion ended, Diep was brought out to rest. She felt slightly dizzy, her head spinning faintly, yet she forced herself to stay alert. Her eyes immediately turned toward the emergency room door, as if even the smallest update would be enough to steady her heart. After many hours of tension, the emergency room door finally opened. The doctor stepped out, removed his mask, and this time his voice was noticeably lighter. "The patient is out of critical condition and has been transferred to the intensive observation unit." That single sentence caused all the long-held emotions to burst free. James's mother broke down in sobs, tears falling uncontrollably. She hurried toward Diep and wrapped her in a tight embrace, her arms trembling but filled with gratitude. Her words of thanks came out broken and incomplete, drowned in tears and uneven breaths. Diep froze for a brief moment, then gently placed a hand on the woman's back, a natural gesture of comfort. When James's mother thanked her through tears, Diep simply shook her head slightly, her voice soft but clear. "It was what I should do." No blame was spoken. No resentment was brought back up. It was simply a choice made from the heart, quiet, sincere, and asking for nothing in return. James's father remained in a coma and was transferred to a special monitoring unit under strict medical supervision. The medical machines emitted steady, monotonous sounds, yet each rhythmic beat made those waiting outside hold their breath. The closed door separated everyone from the motionless man inside, like a fragile line between hope and unanswered fear. No one could be certain when he would wake up. Nor could anyone confidently say whether he would fully survive this critical condition. Time became the hardest thing to measure, as every passing minute carried a heavy sense of waiting. James's mother often stood by the glass window, quietly looking inside, her eyes filled with countless unspoken thoughts. She knew that whether he awakened or not, what had happened would leave a deep mark on everyone involved. A silent question hung in the air. If he were to wake up, if he were to learn that it was Diep, the woman he once opposed, the one he had never accepted, who saved his life, what would he think? Would he be calm enough to reflect on everything that had passed? Would the life that had just been preserved be enough to change his perspective, to soften a heart long hardened by prejudice and rigid beliefs? That question was not meant for him alone, but for everyone waiting outside. Diep sat quietly on a long bench, her face still pale after the blood donation. She did not dwell on the future, nor did she hope for recognition or gratitude. In her heart, there was only one wish, that he would survive, and that James would not have to face yet another loss. And then, there was James. When he learns the full truth, that while he was in hiding, torn between reason and family ties, Diep was the one who stepped forward, placing her own life on the line to save his father, how will he react? The decision to take his father to court, a choice that caused him immense pain yet one he stubbornly held on to, will it still carry the same meaning? Or will that quiet sacrifice force him to reconsider everything, to look again at the fragile boundary between justice, resentment, and family? Will James continue down the path he has chosen, or will he stop at this crossroads to listen to his heart once more? And amid all these unanswered questions, the fate of their relationship seems to stand before a major turning point, where a single decision could change everything. Everything remains open. The answers have yet to be revealed. All will slowly come to light in the next episode. Don't miss it.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình nha. Hôm nay thì mình đang làm video. Cảm ơn mọi người rất là nhiều vì đã yêu quý và theo dõi video của mình nhé. Mình thì vẫn đang làm video. Mình đang chọn một cái ảnh có tone nó hợp lý này. Tạm biệt mọi người, hẹn gặp lại mọi người trong video sau.